All right, let's get started. Here we go again. Gonna have some fun again today. Notice, of course, we have the sign-in sheet when you come in every morning. Great thing to do. As we say, this is not Yale's most demanding class, but one thing we do ask you to do is come to the lectures and come to section. You may know if someday you are in fact ill that you'll get an email message from me about a half hour after class is over. So sorry to hear that you were sick this morning. Hope you're feeling better very soon. So we do look after these things. Such an email went out last time. But I'm preaching to the converted because you guys are already here. So good for you. Let's continue with the discussion of the elements of music. We're going to be working today with harmony. So far we've had 2 sessions specifically on rhythm, 2 sessions specifically on melody, and today we come to harmony. Harmony is one of the 2 things that really distinguishes the music of Western civilization. Western classical music, Western pop music. What are the 2 things? Well, as mentioned before, this dependence upon heavy usage of written musical notation. Not so much in the pop music, but certainly in the classical music. Writing it all down, being able to manipulate it in that fashion. So that's one thing that distinguishes Western classical music. Another aspect that we're talking about today is harmony. Stop and think about it. Think about the melodies of China and Japan. Virtually every, and Islamic countries, virtually every musical civilization around the world has more sophisticated melodies than we do in the West. Ours are very blunt in a way. They go from one discrete frequency to another discrete frequency to another discrete frequency, and they're not making use of all of the material in between in any sort of nuanced way. Maybe it's because we're so dependent on the keyboard here. So that's important to keep in mind. Let's talk about rhythm for a moment. Is Western rhythm particularly sophisticated? I was listening as I was coming in this morning, WMNR, they had a Strauss waltz playing there. Pa, pa. How sophisticated is that rhythmically? Think of African music where you have one downbeat and one pattern working against another downbeat and another pattern. Caribbean music, African influence, the same kind of thing. It's worlds ahead in terms of sophistication with regard to rhythm. But the one thing that's distinguished Western music is this idea of harmony, this concept of superimposing multiple pitches. Interesting idea, you know, that you have this sound, and you can put another one with it, you put another one with it, another one, something like that. And you can play with these and manipulate these in interesting kinds of ways. So piling up sounds simultaneously, this idea of harmony, is what makes Western music very special. And what we end up with here, I just reached for anything in my office, here is the overture to a score of a Mozart opera. And look here, how many parts we have playing simultaneously. Some of them may be repeating pitch names. Somebody may be playing C here, and somebody else says, C up there. That sort of thing. They may be duplicating pitch names, but you could have anywhere up to 10, well in this case about 15 different sounds going at once. And you don't get that in other musical cultures. Let's talk for a moment about chords. What's a chord? Well, a chord is just a simultaneous sounding of 2 or more pitches. That's a very basic general definition of a chord. And a chord can be, of course, consonant, or it can be dissonant. So let's stick with just consonant chords. We'll be working with consonant chords today. And the most fundamental of the consonant chords is this idea of the triad, this figure that we call the triad. It's the building block, really, of all our harmonies, whether it's pop or classical. And we're going to use a lot of pop music today, and we'll be pointing out triads there in this pop music. So what's a triad? Well, obviously you get the idea of 3 pitches. How does it work? Let's go over to the keyboard and the staff here. Let's say we've got a scale, and we do have a scale. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And I wanted to construct a triad above each of these notes of the scale. Well, I take this happens to be a C, middle C here. So a triad is going to have 3 pitches, and it spans 5 letter names. And we go one letter name, 2 letter names, 3 letter names, 4 letter names, 5 letter names. We take 1, 3, and 5. Here I'm taking C, skipping D, taking E, skipping F, and taking G, and it gives me this 3-note aggregate. Take 1, skip, take 1, skip, take 1. Ya, ta, tam, ba, tam. And we can do the same thing. Da, ta, 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 tam, and so on, right up the scale in that fashion. Notice, as we said before, we've got this scale, and we've got some notes rather important in the scale. Tonic is very important. We said the yadam, the leading tone, is important. So with chords and triads, some are very important. The tonic is very important, and this dominant, what we call the dominant, it's not really the most important. It sort of leads into, pulls into particularly important setting up the tonic. It's the next important. Right below that is the subdominant. It often pulls into the dominant, which then pulls into the tonic in that fashion. So we would get this idea of, here's a chord here, there's the tonic, here's the dominant, there's the subdominant, and there's the tonic. We can flip this just a little bit. We could say, all right, here's our tonic up here. Lam, bum, 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 and go that way. Tonic, subdominant, dominant, tonic, yum. That way. So we could come up from the tonic or go down from the tonic. Generally speaking, composers are more likely to go down from the tonic and then come back up to the tonic than they are likely to go the other way. So we've got these 3 basic chords we're going to talk about. There are others there that we built on the 2nd and 7th degree of the scale, but these are the most important. And it's surprising how much music these 3 basic chords can accommodate. And all the things. Dominant, tonic, dominant, tonic, finally, subdominant, tonic, dominant, tonic. So a lot of music is made in that fashion. One of my favorite pieces, and I thought it was because it's a good teaching piece, and I thought it was known just to me and other old codgers, is an old cowboy song called Streets of Laredo. But last night I looked it up on YouTube, not on YouTube, on iTunes, and you know there are 139 recordings of that you can buy now. Johnny Cash, Arlo Guthrie, but I'd be interested. Anybody ever heard that before? Raise your hand if you've heard that. 1, 2, 3, well, a few people. So it's a cowboy song. As I walked out in the streets of Laredo, as I walked out in Laredo one day, I spied a cowpoke who was dressed in white linens, dressed in white linens as cold as the clay. And as I was singing that, all I was doing underneath was playing the basic harmony, the chords, and it consists just of 2 chords. As I walk, dominant, tonic, dominant, tonic, dominant, in that fashion. Why do chords have? Why do we do that? Why do we have to change these chords? Any ideas? Why don't I just sing, as I walked out in the streets of... Why do we change chords? Yeah. The melody changes. And because the melody changes, you keep banging that same aggregate against it, it's going to create what? A dissonance. And we don't like dissonances. If we're going to have dissonances, we got to control them. unless I change that chord underneath when I get up here, that's very dissonant. It doesn't sound very silent for a silent night there. So I need to switch to another chord. And then switch back to the original one. So we change chords to make the harmony consonant, or to make the harmony harmonious. All right, so that's something that we need to keep in mind. Here's something else that we're going to ask you to focus on, and that is the rate of harmonic change. The rate of harmonic change. We'll really be asking you two things. Is the harmony changing? Okay? Is the harmony changing or is it static? And if it is changing, is it changing at a regular or irregular rate? By regular rate, every time a chord sounds, it will be holding for exactly the same amount of time. Let's go back to Streets of Laredo. Conduct. 3, 1, 2, 3. One, ba, ba, da, dee, ta, 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 dum, pa, ta, 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 dee, da, da, dee, da, 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 dum. What do you think? Regular or irregular? Regular, okay? But no, okay, so that's regular. Let's go on to another one. Okay, I'm doing a lot there in the bass to make it more interesting. But let's strip that down just to the fundamental chord that's underneath of that. So we're sitting here on the tonic chord, and we'll go la 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 la, and we could even count it out. 1 2 2 2 3 2 4 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 2 2 1 2 2 2 3 2 4 2 1 2 2 2 1 2 1 2. So some chords they're holding for, I guess, four measures, 4 bars, and some for 2, and some for just 1. So that's an irregular rate of harmonic change. So we're not going to be asking you, what chord do we have here, and expect you to say subdominant, or what chord do we have here, expect you to say dominant. We're going to be working with more fundamental things. Is the harmony changing? Is it changing at a regular or irregular rate? Okay. Notice I was playing up here. Oh, jingle bells. So what is it in music that sets the harmony? What part? What's the foundation of harmony? What instrument plays it? Where in the texture are we talking high, low, middle? Low, it's the bass. The bass, it's like these pillars. Think of architecture. You put these pilings in, and then you can build other things around it. Well, those basic notes, the tonic note, the dominant note, the subdominant note, they're sort of the pilings. Then you can ornament around the piling. That's just I could go in that fashion. That would be simple from dominant to tonic, or I could make it a little more interesting. Ba 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 bum 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 bum. And that's kind of what bass players do. Whether they're playing electric bass in a rock band, maybe in an even more sophisticated way, an acoustic bass in a symphony, or double bass in a bluegrass band. And who is the world's most famous double bass player in a bluegrass band? Anybody know? Well, think here at Yale. Well, we'll see. Now, what we've got here is, Brian, if you could bring up this particular video. This is one that this world-famous bass player was kind enough to loan me. It was something put together by Kentucky Public Television. So let's bring up the screen. Okay, good. Let's pause it here just for a second. So here's the setup, and we're going to turn off the lights. We've got a DVD from Kentucky Public Television involving, as you will see, some people that may look familiar. Does this person look familiar? Does anybody know this person? She's a student around here. She was a Yale undergraduate. And she's telling us how she tried out for the Yale Symphony Orchestra. And she was designated as an alternate. And she was crestfallen, but she then saw this ad where some people wanted her to play in a bluegrass band. So let's watch what happens.
Trapped in a classical violinist's body, so I guess they were kind of pessimistic about finding a real fiddle player. So, so she was like, "You're from West Virginia, you should go down there and audition for that." And so luckily, no other fiddle players showed up. They were like, "Phil Monroe," and I was like, "Mozart." So they were very kind and let me, kind of get my training on the job. And so I started playing with them at that point, and it's just been great ever since.
Okay, let's pause it here just for a second. So our mystery bass player is Peter Salovey, the new provost. And I sent him an email, I said, "Peter, look, we're teaching bass over here. Why don't you come in, bring your bass in, and you can demonstrate this stuff." "I'm a little bit busy at the moment, but I got this DVD. You can have this DVD and do whatever you want to with it." So what's he doing there? Boom, 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 boom. And he's working around these particular notes in this particular piece. We're going to say, here's a C, ya, ta, 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 tam, dim, ba. There's the subdom, bum, 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 bum. Then it goes, bum, ba, 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 bum, bum. And oftentimes he's going, bum, 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 boom, 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 bum, 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 bum. But again, it's just fleshing out that subdominant chord, dominant chord, and tonic chord. And we can all hear this. I mean, is this guy playing off of music? Again, we get across the point, not using music. How are they doing this? They're hearing the chords. They're hearing tonic, subdominant, and dominant. And I think we can hear them too. Anybody out there hearing these chords? Can you sing along with these? This is wonderful music. It's great. How many like this music? It's happy music again. We should have a whole course on bluegrass music. It could really be good because a lot of interesting ethnic issues involved in it. So let's continue here, and I'll sort of bang on the piano or sing the basic pitches of the bass, and I hope you'll join with me here. If you don't like bluegrass, you don't have to sing. But if you like bluegrass, sing along with me here. Okay, here we go. Whoops. Okay, maybe that's enough. I could listen to this all day. I don't know, is this too goofy, or stay with this, or ditch this? I think it's wonderful, but you seem less excited by it tonight. All right, so let's turn the lights back, and we'll get back to Mozart and stuff like that. Let's talk about how these basses, we said that the bass note is sort of the foundation, and then you add these other things up above it, and they produce these chords, and the chords are tonic and dominant and so on. Sometimes, if you have a solo instrument, you can play the bass as just a chord, or you could play it the same notes, but spinning them out. And we call that an arpeggio, probably because the harps play this a lot, a sort of arpeggio. Taking the notes of a triad and just spinning them out in succession. And arpeggios work particularly well on triads with pieces that happen to be in 3. As I walked out in the streets of Laredo, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So that's an arpeggio, just a chord, the notes played successively to create an arpeggio. It works less well, these triadic arpeggios, with pieces in 2. That's not so good, right? Kind of a metrical train wreck there. So what we would do with that would be find another pattern. And one of the favorite patterns ever since the 18th century was this thing called an Alberti bass. It goes 1, then up to the 5th note, degree of the triad. 1, 5, 3, 5, 1, 5, 3, 5. And it sounds very classical, but that's a good way of harmonizing something, making something that's not very interesting sound more interesting. Another way of doing it is just taking a note kind of a boogie-woogie bass. You could just take octaves and roll it that way. Beethoven does this in a sonata. And so on. So there you can get the harmony to sound more interesting simply by rolling that octave underneath. So all of these little tricks sort of energize the music and again make it more interesting than it otherwise perhaps would be. Sometimes harmonies can stand by themselves. Sometimes you could take just the harmony and it would be very beautiful. J.S. Bach, I should get my music up here. Where's my music? J.S. Bach wrote a prelude to the first book of his Well-Tempered Clavier, and it's a famous work. It goes this way. And so on. All it really is succession of chords played as arpeggios. So there it sat for about, well, we could say rather specifically about 140 years or so. And a French composer in the 19th century, Charles Gounod, came along and said, well, gee, that's nice, but I could write a melody against that. So we're going to listen to this, listen to Bach's harmony underneath. At the same time, we listen to this lovely melody that Charles Gounod composed for it. And it gives us a chance to think about melody, and it gives us a chance to think about the sound of the cello. The cello is a particularly beautiful instrument. I've always said if I ever come back as a musical instrument, I want to come back as a cello. It's just so rich and so beautiful, it can soar. So let's listen to a lovely cello line added over top of Bach's original harmony. descending sequence. Here that pattern shows up again, but a lower step. Now it sounds as if he's going to do it yet a third time. But this time, he takes that melody and moves up with it. The rest of this, he's arching for a high moment. And we'll get to that. It's building higher and higher. Stop it there. It comes back to the tonic after that lovely climax at the top of that. So we need to point out that we've got these two types of chords here. The idea of this was all in C major, but we could turn this into C minor. Let's go back and review this. We have up on the board, again, the scale. And we need to talk about these triads that are made up of either major or minor thirds. Here we could look at it this way, with this particular interval and this particular interval. Let's go over to the keyboard here, because I think it's easier to show here. So we're going to start here with C, because C is kind of revenue neutral. We'll start here with C, and we're going to skip one, take one, skip one, take one. So we get C, E, G. Notice coming up here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 half steps here. This is an interval. This interval from C up to E is the interval of a third because it spans 3 letter names. C up to G is a fifth. It spans 5 letter names. So we have C, D, E being a third with 1, 2, 3, 4 steps in it, half steps. Now we're going to go from E up to G. Notice here we get 1, 2, 3, just 3. And that's because, as said before, we've got this arbitrary division of the octave according to Greek mathematics, onto which in the 9th and 10th and 11th century the Benedictine monks laid on another system that didn't quite work. So up here this all seems to be the same distance. E to F seems to be the same distance as D to E, but it's not. It's only half the distance. So we get this funny disjunction in the keyboard here. But in any event, the important thing to note is that we have a major triad with the big third on the bottom and the little third on the top. If we switched this around now and went to C, E flat, G to give us the minor triad, then of course we would have just 3 half steps here and 4 here. What are reciprocal angles or something like that? You change one, ipso facto, you change the other. But that's all that's in play, and we've seen this in play before. Just the positioning of that third will determine whether this triad is a major triad or a minor triad. Let's see how this works out in terms of real sound. I'd like you guys down here, just hold that pitch. And TAs, can you sing the fifth? La, and nice and loud, all right, everybody. And everyone else, ya, there's the major third, work with me, everybody else sing that third, la. Now we're gonna go minor, la, major, major, minor, major, and it's just just tweaking that middle note of the triad there. That's all that's really involved. And composers have tweaked this. Here's a piece by Franz Liszt that was reorchestrated by a contemporary composer called Lugubrious Gondola in French, or in English, translating from the French. Let's listen to a bit of it. Starts out with a woodwind instrument. What woodwind instrument is playing here? And then we'll focus on the change from one triad to the next. Okay, let's stop there. Let's just pause it right there. So what instrument was that? Did you pick that up? Yeah, it was a clarinet. Now, if we were doing this on a quiz or test, we'd probably play that 3 times, so that you hear a lot more than just that. But it was a clarinet. Now we go to this sound, and watch what happens. Moves to another chord. Minor, major, minor, major, minor, major, minor. Okay, let's pause it there. Let's pause it there and reset that just a little bit, because underneath, what's the bass doing here? What's that? Arpeggio, yeah, just an arpeggio underneath. So sometimes they take these chords and we just use it as an arpeggiated support. Last time, that's all Puccini does by way of a harmonic support there. Just takes that tonic chord and basically just works that out as an arpeggio underneath. All right, so let's see if we can begin to hear the distinction between a major triad and a minor triad. And for this, we're going to turn to a very famous piece, the Moonlight Sonata of Beethoven. And I ask you, if you got a piece of paper there, I hope you do, we're going to play 19 chords for you, and we're going to ask you which is major and which is minor. So you know the piece. So I'm going to sort of strip these down to their essence here. Here's chord number 1, major triad or minor triad. Here's chord number 2. Here's 3, 4, 5. Here's 6, 7. Here comes 8. Here's 9, 10, 11. Here's 12, 13, 14. 15, 16, 17, here's 18, and 19. That's 19. So how'd you do? Well, let's see here. Let's go back and double check this. Well, that's a minor chord. I'll just tell you the answers here. That's major. This is minor. 3 is minor. 4 is minor. What about that one? That may be a tough one. Is that a major chord or a minor chord? Major. Some of these are hard though. Major or minor? Major. Okay, that was 6. Here's 7. 7 is major. 8 is minor. 9 is major. 10 is major. 11 is minor. 12 is major. 13 is minor. 14 minor. 15 minor. 16 minor. 17 major. 18 minor. 19 major. So we'll be working, this I think is fair game, just to differentiate between a major triad and a minor triad. And we'll be doing that on the test a week from now, but we'll be giving you lots of prepping in that, in section this week. Let's return to the pop realm and focus continually here on harmony and combine the idea of harmony with major and minor triad. I'm going to play a piece that I've always liked by U2. I don't really know much about them, but it's an interesting piece. Love is Blindness. Let's listen to chunks of this, and we'll see what they're doing with the harmony here. What's the meter? Kind of a slow what? Okay, so for copyright reasons, we're cutting this exactly short. We don't want to go over our limit here. Okay, so we're going to skip ahead now and listen to just a little bit more. Ya, dot. I think that's kind of the beat here, kind of a slow beat. Let's hear just a little bit more, and then I'll start to play along. And I want you to count the number of bars, number of measures in the pattern. This is a pattern that repeats over and over. In music, when that pattern repeats, we call it an ostinato. Ostinare, from the Italian word ostinare, stubborn, pig-headed. So we have an ostinato harmony here. And how many bars is in this ostinato, or are there in this ostinato pattern? 1, 2, 2. You see your love made complete. Thread is ripping, the knot is slipping. Love is blindness. Love is clockworks and cold steel. Fingers too numb to feel. Squeeze the handle, blow out the candle. Love is blindness. Stop it, and it's going to continue again. Anybody able to count the number of bars in the pattern, just on that one little quick playing there? Yeah, Betty? 16? Okay, you're on the right track. Roger? 8. Yeah, it was a 16-bar pattern. It was we played 16 bars there, but the harmony of the second 8 bars was identical to the harmony of the first 8 bars. It was just repeating that same harmony. What's the harmony? Is this piece by U2 in major or minor? How many think major? Raise your right hand. Sinister minor types, raise your left hand. Okay, it's definitely in minor. So it's one of these unusual pop pieces in minor. All right, so that's chord 1. That's the tonic. What about this triad? Major, minor? Major. What about this one? Major. What about this one? Minor. Okay. Then back to minor, major, and and minor at the end. So that's our 8-bar pattern. Now, maybe even kind of sing along with this. My question to you, and this is the last one with this piece, is this an example of a regular rate of harmonic change or an irregular rate of harmonic change? So here we go. Maybe I'll just play it on the piano just for the simplest thing here. Ready, go. So what do you think? Regular or irregular? How many think regular? How many think irregular? It's actually irregular. Thaddeus, tell me why. Anybody tell me why? I start to put you on the spot here, but you got it right.
Well, the bass chords didn't fall on the meter.
Well, no, they were kind of falling on the meter, okay. But there was one moment when something was a little bit different. Elizabeth?
It lasted longer.
Okay, it lasted longer. What's the it here?
The chord lasts longer at the end of the phrase.
Okay, at the end of the phrase, 7, 6, 7, 2, 8, 2. So that one lasted 2 bars. 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 4, 2, 5, 2, 6, 2, 7, 2, 8, 2. So one of those chords lasted, actually one of those chords toward the end there lasted twice as long as all the others. Roger, a question?
Could that last part be a rest
It could conceivably be a rest, but that would give us kind of a 7-bar phrase. And I don't like 7-bar phrases. I've never met a 7-bar phrase that I was really comfortable with. And musicians generally don't like that. So it's better to go with, I've used this for the first time in section the other day, and I'll use it again here a second time. Occam's razor. If there's a simple solution, go for it. So take the idea of symmetry and assume that it's an 8-bar phrase and you've got one chord holding for an extra chord. But theoretically, that's possible. Question here?
If there's ornamentation between like the chord progressions, would we consider it regular?
We would not get into that, but it would still be considered regular. All they're doing is filling between chord, like Peter Salovey. Okay, all he's doing is, and if he comes playing other things along the way, that's still regular. But that's far more sophisticated than we're ever going to get to. We're just going to go plunk, 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 okay? So keep it very, very much in the straight and narrow. All right, we have one more idea to talk about, and that is the concept of key and modulation. Now this piece by U2 is written in a key. It's got the home key here. It's an odd key. It's B flat minor. Ooh, 5 flats, B flat minor. But it nonetheless is a key. And the whole piece, at least the vast majority of it, is in that one key. Occasionally, composers will change keys. I was thinking I could play right for you here the Beethoven. He starts. So here we are in this minor key. And here he is in a new key. This is a major key here. So composers do change keys. And when they change keys, they affect what's called a modulation. Let's listen to an example of, do we have Copland up next? Okay, let's listen to an example of a pretty simple modulation affected by Aaron Copland, American composer working in New York City in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. Wrote a ballet suite called Appalachian Spring, and in it he has one section where he's working through a series of variations on a folk tune called A Gift to Be Simple, and he pulls off a modulation. So let's listen to Copland's Appalachian Spring, as he proceeds, and I'll kind of try to duplicate and go crazy up here at the piano at the moment we get to the modulation. Modulations are hard to hear. Modulations are hard to hear. The best you can do with it oftentimes is say, this is unsettled, maybe it's modulating. And I'm not even sure we would ask you, has the piece modulated? They're really kind of hard to hear. But let's try anyway. So here's a Copland modulation. So here he is in this key. Pause it right there. I think this is where the modulation comes. Then he's going to bring in he's sitting on this note, he brings in the trombone. And then the trumpet will jump off from there to a much higher. He was here, and now he's modulated up to here. So let's see if we can hear this modulation now. Here we go. We're going to pause it there. So that's a modulation. Conceptually, it's pretty straightforward, but it's hard to hear. I think I've got one that's easier to hear. It's a piece I like to use because it's just off the charts in terms of what other popular music was doing at that time. It's a piece by the Beach Boys. Beach Boys music is extremely interesting. I think the California Airheads, no. This is really musically just light years ahead of what everybody else was doing, I guess late 50s, early 60s. So what I've got here on the board is a harmonic scheme, and we're going to, once again for copyright reasons, just take little chunks of this. But you can see that it's a piece that uses a lot of triads. So every time you see a G up here, that means we have a chord built on G and a triad on E, triad on A, triad on F, D, E. And just looking at this isn't shaping out to be 1, 4, 5, 1. So it's moving around a lot. Then it gets to a section where it does get very boring. It's very static at that particular point. And then something of interest will happen. So let's listen to a little bit of this. And it's a piece in which there are contrasts between sections of movement with wild modulations and then sections of stases.
Round, round, get around, I get around, yeah, get around, round, round, I get around, I get around, round, round, I get around, 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 I'm getting bug driving.
So here it gets very boring. And we're not going to even listen to it. It's just going to sit there. I'm really hip and I'm having a great time. But then the text comes back to I get around. So I think that's what I've had to parse this thing out into a Frankenstein. But let's listen to the next thing. I think we go back to the idea of I get around.
I get around, get around, round, round, I get around, get around, round, round, I get around.
More boring stuff at this point. But let's pick it up as we come to the end of what I think is this boring stuff, and we'll listen to what they do there. Go ahead. So they're sitting here in which yada ba 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 ba, where we want to go yada ba da ba ba. So what kind of cadence have they given us there? Deceptive cadence. Deceptive cadence, and that takes it up a half step, and then it jumps. It doesn't jump to the Aaron Copland Appalachian Spring, but it does the same thing. It does exactly the same thing. It uses that in a biam, pam, ba, da, da, da. It's going to jump up from the dominant to the tonic, and then slide up one more thing. So that we have now a whole section in A flat, and the original was in G. So he's modulated to A flat. It's extremely sophisticated, involving half-step modulations and things like that. Who would have thunk that from the Beach Boys? All right, we're going to stop here. We've got sections this week. We have a test a week from today. If you look at your emails later in the day, you'll see an email from me saying that we are posting a prep sheet for the test, and it will tell you all you need to know and how to study over the weekend for the test next Thursday. So let's listen to a little bit of the Aaron Copland as you go out.